Okay. See if this works. All right. What's up, everyone? Happy Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this awesome Back to the Pack webinar. We have Sam Crow on tonight. She is a holistic mountain coach, which I think is like the coolest job title I've ever heard. She's based out of Ogden, Utah, and she teaches like mountain biking and backcountry skiing, snowboarding basics, and all sorts of other stuff. So I will let her take it away. Thank you so much, Sam, for being here. And yeah, everyone else, thanks for tuning in.
Heck yeah, I'm excited to meet y'all. And this presentation or workshop webinar is very interactive. So if you have any questions throughout, I'm not opposed to like stopping and answering questions. I actually love that. It lets me know that you're with me and what I'm saying is resonating with you all. So feel free to chime in, type in the chat. I might miss the chat. So feel free to just unmute yourself and be like, hey, and I'll stop. And I love it. So feel free. Okay. So I'm going to pull up a presentation here quick for you. I love my slideshows. I don't know if any of y'all have been to any of the workshops that I've done before. Probably not, but slideshows are my thing. Okay, move your faces. All right, so before I jump in, I'll talk a little bit about myself. So yes, I'm a holistic mountain coach, which is a made up job title for myself because I couldn't think of like, there really isn't this job yet, which is incorporating the mindset and the nutrition portion within the skill building portion of what I do on mountain bikes and backcountry skis. So holistic mountain coach, I think, encapsulates everything that I do for my athletes, which is more than just coaching. So you'll get a little taste of that within this mountain bike starter kit. I'll show you our schedule here. First, we're going to go over finding your perfect bike. So does anybody currently have a mountain bike? Nope. Laura, Mare?
It's a very basic one. I think
Cool.
It's technically a mountain bike, but nothing's fancy.
Heck yeah. Okay. So this will come in handy for all of you then when you're purchasing your first bike, if that's something that you plan on doing in the future. And then we're going to be going over bike maintenance tools, which is something that is so nice to have on hand at home. So you're not running to the shop constantly for like little repairs here and there. There's a lot of things that you can do on your own and that are not difficult. Bikes have some pieces to them that are a little bit more complicated, but for the normal day-to-day upkeep, you can do it for yourself. And then I'll go over what's in my pack. And then we'll go over like some of the beginner mindset blocks and how to overcome those. And then what's next. So if you want to work with me further, and then at the very end, I have a gift for you all. So, all right, let's dive in. Okay, so finding your perfect bike. So for sizing on bikes, it's kind of different. So for me, I'm in between sizes and I could fit into multiple categories. Honestly, I want like 3 different mountain bikes, but I can't afford that right now. So we're down to 1. But finding the best bike to fit maybe your range of style and your size and what you want from that bike. So if you have a shorter torso, so longer legs, maybe shorter torso, you like a more casual riding position, which means you're a little bit more upright and not so far forward. And maybe you're a little bit less flexible, which I haven't had the flexibility thing come up for me, but on the research that I've done, they said people who are less flexible like us, like shorter bike. And then if you want a more nimble ride, so that means you're able to move it around a little bit easier because since it is a little bit smaller, it's like that much more compact and you're able to whip that back tire around if you want. So if those things kind of pertain to you, you're going to want to go smaller, go down the size smaller. A smaller bike will have a shorter reach, allowing you for a more upright riding position, and a shorter wheelbase makes for a more playful ride. And every bike brand has a different sizing chart. So if you are looking for bikes, make sure to go to that specific brand and go to their sizing chart to see where you fit in. And if you're like smack dab in the middle, that's amazing. So, or like smack dab in the middle of like a medium. So a medium is perfect for you. You're a unicorn. There's not many of you. A lot of us are in between sizes. But if you have a longer torso and enjoy a more aggressive riding position. So that means a little bit more further forward and your chin is closer to the bars. You have plenty of flexibility and you want a more stable, like plush ride, then you're going to want to go bigger. So a bigger bike will have the longer reach, allowing you for a more forward aggressive riding position, and that longer wheelbase makes it a little bit more, just like a Tonka truck going down that trail, not like a little, toy Hot Wheels car. Okay. Any questions on the sizing portion of it? Pretty straightforward. Awesome. So now we're going to go over the different styles. We're going to go over 3 different styles. There are also downhill bikes, but we're not in that category yet. So we're going to start with the first 3. So with each bike style, we'll look over the front suspension, which is the fork here. Can you see my mouse going in the circle around that? So that's the front suspension. The rear suspension is your rear shock, and then the weight of the bike, and then the pros and cons of each style of each bike category. Okay, so a cross-country bike is going to be the smallest amount of travel. That means your front fork and your rear shock are going to have less travel to go through, meaning it's going to be a little bit more rigid. So our front suspension is going to be 100 to 120 millimeters. You don't have to know what that means, really. You just know it's less travel. Also with the rear suspension, you can either have a hardtail, which means you have no rear suspension, or you can have 100 mils. And the weight is roughly around 25, give or take. So this bike has less suspension, great pedal efficiency. So when you have less travel, all of that energy is going into your pedal strokes and is not being absorbed by the bike. It's great for climbing. It's lighter weight, and it's good for long, flowy, smooth rides. So does that sound like anybody's style of bike? Not sure yet, maybe. Okay, trail bike. So you'll get a little bit more travel. So 120 to 140 millimeters, 100 to 140 millimeters in the rear. And then the weight is just a couple of pounds more here. So you're still going to be able to cruise uphill. You might have a lockout mode that allows you to have that more rigid back so that your pedal efficiency is still up there. This is definitely the most versatile choice. So if you're looking for something to get you around a lot of different trails, this would be the bike for you. So this allows you to go over maybe a little bit more of technical sections with rocks and rollers, and also allows you to keep that efficiency on long runaways that you don't need a lot of travel for. So capable to tackle a variety of conditions. Does that sound like anybody's style? Yeah, awesome. Ashley's, Mare's. I didn't catch Alyssa, maybe. Okay, now we're getting into a little bit bigger of a style here. We're in the all mountain enduro category. So this is what I currently have, and I would complete honesty, it's a lot of bike for me, for 90% of the rides that I go on, but I do love it because it can get me out of a lot of sticky situations. Like I feel when you have more travel, it kind of absorbs some of those mistakes that you make on the trail sometimes, and you can get away with a little bit more. However, I'm looking to downsize soon here. So the front suspension is 150 to 170 millimeters. Rear suspension is 140 to 165 millimeters. And then the weight is 27 to 30 pounds. So that first category that we went over with the cross country was about 25, 26 pounds. So this is about 5 pounds more, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it does add up over time. All mountain and enduro bikes also have a little bit more of a slack body position. So that means you're kind of sitting back a little bit further. You have a little bit steeper of a head tube angle, which is the angle of your handlebars, and you have a steeper seat tube angle, which just puts you back a little bit further, kind of sitting you into that ride. So it also makes that climbing a little bit more difficult because it's made to go more downhill. So it climbs okay, which is what I've learned. It climbs okay, capable of most downhill, super plush rides. So like I said, it absorbs some of those mistakes for you. Good for lift access. So you don't have to have a downhill bike and an all mountain enduro bike or a trail bike. If that is something that you plan on doing in the future, is riding a lot of lifts, but you also want it to be able to handle the trails, this would be the bike for you. It's a hard trail hitter. And I can't see that last one because that little, you were sharing your screen thing is there, but I'm seeing that it's slack and stable, I think is what it says. Cool. slack and stable, which is what I kind of said earlier. Does that sound enticing to any of you? No. Ashley's like, yeah, maybe that could be it. Okay. So now we're going to go over components of each bike. So when you buy a bike, it also comes with a lot of different components and a lot of different options for you. So a lot of the new bikes are coming with dropper posts now, which is just the seat post that allows you to put the seat up and down as you're riding really easily without having to get off the bike and getting a tool out or undoing a clamp. It allows for you to adjust that seat on the fly, which is really nice. It's not something that's 100% necessary, but if you buy a bike without a dropper seat, it's probably going to be your next investment because it is so nice to have that, especially if you live in an area that has cross-country trails that there's a lot of ups and downs. If you're going on a trail that is like up for a long period of time and then straight down, it's not as big of a deal. But when you're going on trails that go up and down, it's nice to be able to adjust your seat on the fly because you want your seat down when you're going downhill and up when you're climbing. Okay. And if you can't afford a seat dropper post right away, you can just swap out that little clamp that goes around your dropper seat post for a quick release clamp. Just a cheaper version to get you by until you're able to afford a dropper seat post. You can look that up on Amazon. So dropper seat clamp post, quick release. Okay, tubeless tires. With tubeless tires, you're able to ride at a lower tire pressure. So with most bikes back like, I don't even know how many years ago, all my bikes have had tubeless tires, I'm pretty sure, or we've made them into tubeless tires. But way back when they used to use tubes in tires, they still do nowadays once in a while, especially on like guiding businesses. They usually have tubes in the tires because those bikes can go through a lot and probably have had a lot of flats. But it allows you to ride at lower tire pressure. So your tires are your first line of suspension, right? So those are going to be the first things to hit the rocks. And when you're able to ride at a lower tire pressure, it kind of absorbs some of those little finer bumps for you. They do reduce a bit of weight. So instead of having that like extra rubber and extra tube within your tires, that's like completely nixed. So that helps a lot. No more pinch flats, which is just something that happens when the tube gets pinched in between the rim and a rock, and it just pops the tube. And the small holes on tubeless tires seal up on their own. So there's this like white gooey stuff that goes inside the tire, white liquid that goes inside the tire that seals those holes up as you're riding, which is kind of magic and has helped a lot. So especially if you're in a place that has maybe goat heads or something that get into the tires often and pop your tubes, this will help with that. Okay, wheel size. There are 27.5 tires and there's 29er tires. The industry seems to be going more towards the 29ers, but there's still a place for both of them. I think there's like pros and cons to both, right? So the 27.5 are easier to make those tighter turns with just because of that smaller radius of the tire. They're easier to jump with just because they're a little bit lighter and more nimble. They're good for smaller riders. So if you're really like a petite person, that's going to help you out, and easier to turn and easier cornering. Good job, Sam. Same thing. And then the 29ers, they roll a little bit quicker. So since they have that like larger diameter, they're going to roll a lot faster down the trail, not like 10 times lightning speed faster, but it does add up. Actually, my friend and I were cruising on a trail. Neither of us were pedaling. Neither of us were holding our brakes. She had 27.5 tires. I had 29er, and the weight difference between us two could have came into play, but I was catching up to her like constantly and having to put on the brakes. So I did notice it then that they actually do roll quite a bit faster. They float over the bumps and holes a little bit more nicely than the 27.5 tires, just because they are bigger, and then they maintain their speed. Okay, and then the frame material. So we've got carbon and aluminum. So carbon has a better strength to weight ratio, so it's a lot stronger, it's lighter, and it's more expensive. And then aluminum is more forgiving. So carbon, if you get a nick into it that goes deep, it compromises the whole frame. Aluminum can take a hard hit and still work fairly well, like work for years and years and years, right? But I actually have one hanging up in my office that I nicked to the layer that you don't want it to go to. That is just a trophy now. So having that aluminum does help with getting like, if you plan on crashing a lot and like the learning process, aluminum's a little bit more forgiving for that. Aluminum's a little bit heavier and less expensive. So it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a less expensive ride to start off with, aluminum's probably, you're going to get more for your buck, because you're going to be able to put that money into the components and the other things. Okay. Any questions on that part so far?
I love like, so I went from a 26er to a 27.5. Yes, my bike is very old. My old bike is very old.
Yeah.
And my husband still has a 26 that he like loves and will not get rid of. Like he had it all like custom done to exactly what he likes. And
Yeah.
I will just say, like, I have noticed a massive difference in, I mean, and granted, like the components on my new bike are a lot nicer, but like my ability to climb is amazingly like so much easier on the just the 27.5 to the 26. So I can't even imagine like jumping to a 29er.
Yeah.
Which like I didn't want a 29er because I'm 5'5", so I'm like average height. But I felt like for me, like that bigger of a bike, like when I'm still kind of in this like learning stage, was like too much to maneuver. But just like the climbing difference and like the bigger tires, I was like, this is, and then just little like, I mean, drops that like used to be really, really scary on a 26, and now it's like just feels like a bump. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I know that there's a couple people on here that are like super, super new to like the idea of mountain biking. And I feel like people are like live and die like by their bike tire size. Like if you
Oh my
like
gosh.
29ers, like you're like 29 is it. But definitely like try out both. Like if you are someone who's like, you know, completely new, because there are like for sure like pros and cons to both. And yeah, people are, once they figure out their tire size, they're like pretty set.
Yeah. Everyone likes to have opinions about gear, right? Like
Yeah, for
we
sure.
love that. Like just gear nerds. Really,
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get into sports just so that we can learn more about something and
Nerd
like
out.
have opinions about it.
Right. Have you ever ridden one of like the mullet bikes? Like the like
No, but that's what like I've thought of what I want my next bike to be, and I want it to be a mid-travel, like a trail style bike. That's a mullet.
okay.
But they actually don't. We actually just found one, but it hasn't existed up until like we found this one. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know
rare.
like Juliana Santa Cruz makes them. So that's, which one do they put in front? 20, is it 29 in front?
29.
Yeah, so it's a 29 in front and then a 27.5 in back. Which is like hilarious, but it's like
Yeah,
kind of
because
a bit of a mullet, but
it keeps that roll and that speed up front, right? So your front tire is the first thing to go over something and keep your speed with, but you get the nimbleness of the 27.5 in the back, which is what you want to flip around more, right?
yeah.
So I want that. I'm like, because I have a 29er right now, and I'm like, it's just a really big bike, but I love how it keeps its speed. So I'm thinking a mid-travel mullet. All the mullets right now are more enduro based.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Fun. All right.
Okay, bike maintenance tools. So the floor pump is just a bigger style of pump that has a lot of them nowadays have a pressure gauge on them. You're going to want one with a pressure gauge just to be able to track like what you like your tire pressure at and being able to set it at that same pressure every single time. This allows you to pump air in your tires a lot more efficiently than pumping up by your hands. So it's not necessary. If you have a hand pump, you could get away with that for a while, I'm sure, but it does get frustrating after a while and takes a lot of time with just a little hand pump. And this is a part of your daily checklist. So before you go for a ride, you would check your tire pressure. So just a starter point for you all, I like to ride with my front tire and my friends do between like 25 and 21. And then the rear tire about 26 to 21, depending on how aggressive of a rider you are. And then your weight comes into play with your tire pressure as well.
What is the,
yeah.
sorry, what is, I guess if you're a less aggressive rider, would that be like more or less pressure?
Less pressure.
Less pressure, okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So if you like for aggressive riders that are coming into corners really hot or coming into rock gardens really like just crashing through them, that extra tire pressure allows them to not pop their tires. So when you're a little bit more of a like casual rider and not going into the corners quite as hot, and you're kind of like making your way through rock gardens, you don't need that tire pressure to protect your rims and protect your tires. But if you are riding tires with tubes in them, you're going to want to ride with a higher tire pressure than that. And I would suggest just Googling. You can Google a chart for that for like your body weight. Good question. Lube and towel, so chain lube. So basically every time you go out for a ride, like not every time, there's rides that I've gone without like lubing and wiping down my chain beforehand. If the ride that I went on before that was not as dusty and not as dirty and my chain stayed pretty clean. But if you are riding through really dusty trails and your bike is getting really dirty, you're going to want to lube and wipe off your chain between every ride just to keep that chain running smoothly. So in Park City, in Salt Lake, Utah, and Ogden, now I just moved, it's really, really dry and dusty. So dry lube works best here. But if you live in a more humid climate, wet lube is going to work better for you, or more wet climate. And then this isn't 100% necessary, but it is really nice to have on hand, especially when you're setting up your bike for yourself for the first time, having a shock pump. And sometimes when you buy your bike from a shop, they'll help you set up the suspension for that first time, but it does need to be adjusted throughout your summer just to make sure that you're still riding at that proper pressure. So having one of these comes in handy when setting it up. Your bike might have a pressure gauge chart along the fork. You'll see like a little chart along the side of it there, and it has different pressures for different weights. And you just find your weight on that chart and then set your pressure to that to start. And then to check the sag, I have a whole video on this, and maybe I'll share it with you, Laura, because it is kind of hard to describe on here without having a bike. But basically your sag is where your suspension, how much it collapses with just your body weight. So you're not going to want to bounce while you're on that. You're going to want to carefully get on so that you're not like bouncing and like compressing the suspension. And then carefully get off and then see how much of that travel you used with the little O-rings. So for your rear suspension, you want to use about 20 to 30% just with your body weight. And with your front fork, about 15 to 20%. Okay. Allen wrench set. So Allen wrenches, we've all found those in like our IKEA bookshelf things, right? But this is like a whole set of them because there's a lot of different nuts or screws on our bikes that you take different sizes of these. So having a whole set of these is really comes in handy for tightening the loose bolts. Same with the Torx wrench here. So this comes more in handy when you have SRAM components. So SRAM makes like your drivetrain or your braking system. So if you have SRAM components, it uses a lot more of this Torx wrench set. If you have Shimano, which is the other big one, more Allen key. Pedro tire levers, which are just tire levers, but I love Pedro tire levers. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but they're the only ones that haven't broke on me on the trail, which is hard to find. And they've been in my pack for such a long time that like they've been sun-baked and everything, and they're still working. I think my husband just broke the first one within our mountain biking, and we've been mountain biking for 6 years. So yeah, took a long time to break our first one. And we went through a lot of Park Tool tire levers. There's like, I love Park Tool, but their tire levers suck. And tire levers just help you change a flat tire. So you would need those. Slick Honey is not an energy snack or anything like that, but it helps lubricate your dropper post and your suspension, cleaning up those seals around the outside of your suspension so that your suspension runs smoothly throughout the whole season. You don't need that either, but it is handy to keep your suspension running smoothly throughout the season and just is good maintenance. And then you can also get suspension cleaner if you want to get real clean. This basically just allows you to clean the suspension even further, allowing it to run more smoothly. And I think this would come into play if you notice your suspension starting to stick or lag. You would just want to try to clean that out maybe before getting a full new suspension or getting a tune-up. Okay, cleaning supplies. So to keep your bike nice and sparkly, you can either get a kit designed specifically for this, or you can just go to Walmart or Target and find these brushes. So like a big soft bristle brush for your frame, and then a small stiff brush. Oh, that's such a hard word to say. Small stiff bristle brush for your chain and drivetrain. A microfiber towel for your suspension, and then a bucket to create a soapy water bin. And then the only thing that I get that is specific to like cleaning my bike is a chain scrubber. So this is a contraption that goes around your chain. You like clamp it on with soapy water inside, and then you just run the chain through it and it cleans the chain like beautifully. You could never get it that clean with just a little like brush, unless you spent like an hour. So I love that because it just helps your drivetrain run smoothly all summer long. And honestly, I finally need to get a new chain, but I've had this chain since I got my bike. So 2.5 years now, which is pretty good for chain life. Simple Green. We don't need anything fancy. There are fancy bike cleaners out there, but Simple Green is the best all-around bike cleaner. Good for the earth, good for the pocket. It's not super expensive. Okay, any questions on the bike tools, maintenance things? Feeling good? Feeling ready? Awesome.
Just a quick question, where like for some like the chain scrubber, like some of those more specific like bike tools, do you just get them on Amazon, or is there like a particular like site that you like? Or
Yep, you could either go into your local bike shop, which I love just because it helps support your local community and shops, and they need some extra love right now. Or you could go on to Amazon for sure. Like Jensen has a lot of tools, Jensen bike parts, or just going to the Park Tool website too. Park Tool has all the different tools that you would ever need for your bike. That's the brand that we have a lot of things from.
Sweet. Thanks.
Good question. Okay, let's dive into what's in my backpack when I go riding. So all the snacks, bring extra snacks. Don't steal snacks from your friend. They won't invite you to go with them again. And then water, I always bring a little bit extra. So I also am a very salty sweater. So I need electrolytes pretty much on every ride. You'll know that by like just having that residue on your face a little bit. If you just notice you sweat a little bit more than the average bear like me, having electrolytes with you is going to help for your endurance in general and just not crashing and burning and getting fatigue or cramps in the middle of the night after a long ride. A flat tire kit. So I'm going to have 2 of those tire levers, an extra tube, a hand pump, or a couple of CO2 cartridges with an inflator that attaches to those CO2 cartridges. So a hand pump, you can just pump the tire up with your hands, of course. The CO2 cartridges are actually just this little cartridge that, like, have you heard of Whippets before? The things that kids did, like, they probably still do them. It's one of those little canisters that went into like whipping cream bottles. But then you put this little inflator that attaches to your Presta valve on your tire. And it just like you press it on there and it starts blowing it up. It's magic. And it takes, like, if you get a full on flat, it's way quicker. Hand pump is great because it never runs out of air. I mean, you're having to do it manually. It does take a little bit longer. CO2 is great because it's quick, but once you're out, you're out. So if you like I've seen people accidentally do the CO2 wrong, and then they had to use their backup, and then they had to borrow another one from a friend. So just making sure that if you're going out for a longer ride, maybe bring in a couple extra CO2 cartridges or a hand pump backup. Okay, then we got the first aid kit, which has a lot of different things in it. This is like for a big ride. You can obviously cut it down if you're going out for a short ride, or leave it at the car if you're on a really short ride and you're just riding circles around by the house. So bandages are great. I don't think I have it on there, but I've really loved Quick Clot. I think it's like this, it comes in a little powder form, or you can get patches now. But that is helpful because it's just this small little tube. And instead of bringing like a bunch of gauze and a bunch of like roller bandages, you can like sprinkle that on the like maybe profusely bleeding or small cut, and it just clots it right up. So gauze, roller bandage, gloves. Gloves is just like if you're going to be doing first aid on somebody else other than yourself, also just you're sweaty and gross as you're riding. Alcohol wipes, slings or triangle bandages, butterfly bandages, antibiotic ointment, athletic tape. So K2 tape, amazing. Is that what it's called? KT tape. KT tape. KT tape is like one of my favorite things to have in my pack now, whether it be like winter and I'm backcountry skiing or mountain biking, because it's awesome for if blisters or hot spots start to happen, or you can use it instead of roller bandages or instead of a bunch of like tape, athletic tape to go around. Moleskin also takes the place of moleskin. And then having ibuprofen, sun protection, extra electrolytes. I always have a little extra pack of like Scratch Labs in my pack, whether that's going to be for me or somebody that I meet on the trail that's severely dehydrated and I need to help out. Sugar, if that's something, if you know you have sugar crashes, making sure you have that. Antihistamines, tampons, toilet paper, and a Ziploc to put that in if it gets used. And then your bike first aid is a lot smaller than the human first aid. So you can use zip ties, which can help if like some things start to fall off, or like a screw comes loose and it went missing, you can't find it again. You can zip tie things back up for a temporary fix. A chain breaker or a multi-tool with that chain breaker. So multi-tools, you can find those online as well. So you would type in like bike multi-tool, and it has different sets of Allen keys on there, different Torx wrench on there. It has a chain breaker on there sometimes. Finding one with a chain breaker can be helpful, but you can also find just a simple chain breaker as well, which just means if your chain does break, you have to break off an extra couple of links so that you can reconnect a male and a female part. But we won't go into that on this video because that would take another 30 minutes. But those are the three things, or anything else specific you know your bike needs after you've ridden it for a while. And I'm like, oh, this is a tool that doesn't come on my multi-tool. I'm going to bring an extra one of these. Okay. Anybody have anything else they like to add in their pack on other trips? Or Laura, do you have anything you put in your pack? Or
Yeah, I was gonna say a SAM splint is something that I like to pack in just my general first aid kit. It's just basically like they're bright orange, like a lot of like EMS will carry them, but essentially it's just a way to like stabilize and support a fracture. Then you just like wrap it with like ace bandage or gauze, or even like a ripped t-shirt or anything, just to provide a little bit of support if you did like break a wrist or something on the trail.
totally.
And yeah, that's it really.
I love it. Yeah. SAM splints are awesome. I do carry those in my backcountry touring pack, but not in my mountain bike, which actually you probably see a lot of wrist fractures and breaks on mountain biking.
Yeah. Where I'm working right now is basically it's like a ski town, mountain bike town, ER. And so we're in a revolving door of an ortho clinic. And like it's right below it's like right at the base of a bike park. So we just get like, I mean, humerus fractures and like clavicle fractures like multiple times a day. Ugh. We all cheer when the bike park closes.
Yeah, honestly, I'm sure. Yeah, the clavicle is a big thing I know.
Yeah,
for mountain bikers.
Those are no fun.
Yeah, I have not broken any yet. Okay. All right, now the juicy part, and my personal favorite part is the mindset portion of things. It's a little bit more complicated and I love it. So the common challenges with starting something new usually are overwhelm on where to start, comparing to others' ability right out of the gates, acquiring the gear, which isn't necessarily a mindset piece, but I think it kind of goes into like, after I just listed off all those things for you, was there any sense of overwhelm of all the little things that you needed to get? Yeah. a little bit. Yeah. So also acquiring gear can be this mindset block too of we need all these things before we're able to start. And I actually had a client that I was working with backcountry skiing, and she's like, I just need to find the right skis. I was like, have you looked? And she's like, oh my gosh, I've looked so much. I've researched a ton. I was like, what have you found? She's like, there's so many that I could get. I'm like, you just need to pick one. Like, you're holding yourself back right now, and you're almost self-sabotaging by not getting the gear. It's like this next step for you that is like, okay, if I bought this, I am in, and it is happening. And I am then a backcountry skier, or I am then a mountain biker. And that's terrifying. You've like invested in it then. But so acquiring gear is a good one that I'll go over with you. And I'll show you a picture of where I started. And then mentorship. So getting somebody to help you learn the different skills is super helpful. And then working through that fear. And we're just going to touch on these. All these can go a little bit deeper, of course, but we're just going to go over them just superficial level for now. And then if you're interested in diving deeper on them, we can definitely talk about that. Okay. So the overwhelm antidote. It's simple, right? In our heads, we overwhelm, we create this big picture, but it is just breaking it down step by step. Okay. I want to start mountain biking. Where do we have to go from here? We need to get the gear for one. That's like step one, right? How do we get the gear? I'm going to go over that in acquiring the gear. And then step two, is there anybody else that you want to involve in this, that you want help from? But just breaking that down step by step. And not letting that overwhelm take over your whole like picture, like it did for my client that was the backcountry skier of, I just need this and this and that and that. And noticing where you're holding yourself back from starting and where you're overcomplicating things, and starting to list those out of what you need exactly. Because I'm sure once you put it down on paper, it's actually not that bad. There's not that many steps left to go. You've already got the stoke. That's the best one. Okay, the comparison antidote. So bringing awareness to this internal comparison dialogue is step one. So have you ever noticed, like on a run or on a hike, you had this like inner dialogue repeating itself over and over and over again, and you haven't like really thought about what you're thinking about, but as soon as you do, you're like, wow, this is kind of a shitty mindset to have while I'm hiking and doing the thing I love. Anybody? Internal dialogue, broken record going in your head and you don't notice it right away. And if you haven't, maybe bringing awareness to that and being like, hey, how am I talking to myself when I am going out on the trail and with people or by myself? In both circumstances, how does that internal dialogue shift? So if you have something that comes up for you that you're like, when you're out and you're comparing yourself to somebody else, ask yourself, is it really, truly important to you to get to where that other person is? Is it a priority for you to be at the level or have that thing that that other person has? If no, then ride on. Like, awesome. You don't need that. Is this really a priority for you? No, forget about it. Sometimes our mind just goes off on a tangent without us noticing. And we're like, wait a minute, I don't even actually want that. I don't care how fast I am out here. I'm out here because I love this. This is the thing that brings me joy. This is what brings me stoke. I love being out here and just enjoying nature and being with my friends. And know that you have other strengths and things that you choose to focus your energy on. And you have strengths within that other person doesn't have as well. We all bring different things to the table, which is the beautiful part about connecting with communities out in the outdoors, and which is such a beautiful part of this back of the pack community, is it brings all these people together with different strengths to come and help each other out. And if it's a yes, I do want to get there. Ask curious, open-ended questions about that to yourself. Maybe when you get home, you don't need to have a whole therapy session with yourself out on the trail when you're trying to catch your breath on the way up the hill. But if you ask yourself the question, like, is this important or a priority to me? And the answer is yes, remember what that is. And when you get home, journal about it and ask yourself, like, just open-ended questions. What is it about this that I really want? What would it give me? How would it make me feel? Why is it important to me exactly? What, in the end, if I got this thing, where would I be? And then, of course, I have it simplified on here, but then you're going to make a game plan towards that end goal and make it happen. So simplified version, but I think the first tool is bringing awareness to it, honestly answering it for yourself, and then going from there. Okay, acquiring the gear. Honestly, and I've heard Laura say this multiple times, start with what you have. You don't need a bunch of fancy gear to get started in mountain biking. Sure, I listed all those bike maintenance parts, but I'm sure you could go to a shop and they would help you out for not super expensive if you didn't have that Torx wrench set, right? But start with what you have. You don't need a fancy pack or a hydration system. You don't need a top of the line bike or the perfect outfit to make you look the part. Sometimes looking the part does help the confidence a bit. And you're like, I look good out here, but it's not going to make or break your riding. Go to a bike swap. So we have bike swaps here in Utah. And I'm sure if you looked it up online at your local events and community organizations that, or call the local bike shop and just ask like, hey, do you know of any bike swaps that happen and when do they happen? A lot of times they're in the spring, and putting that down on your calendar and going to check out some bikes at a bike swap because you can find some really good deals from local people there. Going to check out Pink Bike. Pink Bike is an amazing place to find used bikes. Get the bike maintenance tools secondhand so you can go to different thrift stores and maybe you might be able to find some, or ask your buddies if they have extra sets. Like Adam and I have so many extra sets of things that we've acquired over the time, and just asking maybe if you can borrow them for the time being until you get your own. And then a starter bike. So you don't need a $5,000 bike to get you started. I started with a $600 bike. And it got me through the first like 2 years of mountain biking. And then I was like, cool, I really love this. I'm ready to invest further into it. And use the backpack that you have. You can use a hiking backpack, a running backpack. You don't need anything fancy as long as it can fit your flat kit, your first aid kit, some snacks, some water if you don't have a water bottle cage on your bike, and go give it your best shot. So this is where I first started. This is my beautiful Turner right here. It was my $600 bike. It had really narrow handlebars, which I didn't know was a thing back then. I mean, I was riding narrow handlebars and it didn't matter because I didn't know any different. These shorts were from a thrift store that had a butt chamois in them, which was super nice because my butt was sore within the first like few rides. I was wearing my running shoes. This was like an old cotton tank top from my work, the place of work I was going. This backpack right here, I had it since I like lived in Portland. Laura, I was telling you I lived there like 8 years ago. And so right here, I probably had that pack for 4 or 5 years. It didn't even clamp shut here or around the waist. So it was just like constantly like falling off of me as I was riding. And I was having the time of my life. I mean, that smile right there just shows you. And my knee was bleeding in this picture even. I even crashed a couple of times on this ride. But you don't need fancy gear to get out there and get started. Okay, and mentorship. So get vulnerable, ask a friend or a coworker to show you the ropes. A lot of times we're scared of holding people back in the beginning and we're like, okay, I just want to learn a little bit on my own before going out with somebody. Great, go pedal your bike around on some dirt trails and get familiar with it first, but then really go ask somebody to help you out. Get vulnerable and ask somebody to like, show you the ropes and get you started. And embrace being a beginner. There's not many times in our adult life that we put ourselves into the spot of being a beginner anymore. And I think that's something that as we grow older is more and more important. And this goes into play for me too. I mean, when I was writing this, I was like, when was the last time I was a beginner at something? And honestly, it was starting my own business. But besides that, it's like, I've wanted to go take dancing lessons forever. And I haven't done that because it's scary. It's vulnerable to go out there and try something and maybe make a fool of yourself for the first time and not do it perfectly. So embrace that chance to be a beginner again. And also I feel like there might be some internal pressure to perform at a higher level, but there's also less external pressure to perform at a higher level when you're first starting something. People are just stoked that you're out doing it. And then also there is a plethora of YouTube videos to help you out and build these skills. So don't go down the rabbit hole too far. Definitely find somebody that you like, enjoy watching on YouTube, but focus on one skill at a time on your rides. Don't try to like do them all at the same time. It can be really overwhelming and you think of too many things at one time and the next thing you're in the bush. So one skill at a time. And then reach out to a local coach. There are a lot of different coaching organizations that are stoked to help out beginners. And I think like beginners are my favorite to work with because that learning curve is so steep. You like learn so much so quickly and the stoke level is high, and just seeing somebody do something for the first time is such a joy. Okay, and then there's the fear part. Mountain biking is inherently a dangerous sport, and this can spark fears. So start small. Don't throw yourself in the deep end, and make sure that if you do reach out to a friend and you're like, hey, I want to try this out, that they also know not to throw you in the deep end as well. Be like, hey, I'm strictly on greens right now. I don't want to do anything beyond a green trail, because a lot of times people's experiences are like, I tried mountain biking once with my brother-in-law or my sister-in-law, and they took me on this like crazy trail and it crashed, and I'm never trying it again because that was so scary. I feel like you've had this experience, Ashley or Alyssa.
Yeah, I had a good friend of mine try to introduce me to mountain biking a few years back. And I mean, I live up in New England, so the terrain's very different. And she's from Jersey and came up. She's already got her bike. She's all set up. She's like, oh, I'm still new. I rent a bike. We go to this easy terrain in the area. And I'm going down and I'm thinking, like, the trauma nurse in me is like, this is where accidents happen. Like, this is scary. Like, I mean, I grew up riding bikes all the time through the woods and stuff, never anything like crazy terrain, but I'm riding down the hill and I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I'm not going back up. And it was a struggle to get up. And at the time I was pretty fit. And then I talked to a doctor a few weeks ago that I work with, and he's like, oh yeah, why would she ever take you there as a beginner? I'm like, you're telling me. So maybe it wasn't just me and it was actually the terrain. So
Yeah,
I think I'm going to restart again and try to repress that memory. But I don't have like a predisposed notion on it.
yes. Well, it's hard to repress those memories. They like to sneak in every once in a while for sure. But
Yep.
yes, that is many people's experiences, and it's so unfair because there are so many trails and different styles of mountain biking out there. And a lot of times what ends up happening is we get thrown in over our head. So making sure your partner or the person that you're going to be riding with knows like, hey, really just trying to take it mellow and figure out my bike. I'm not here to learn a bunch of skills right now. I'm not here to do a bunch of drops or rock gardens. I kind of just want a mellow ride to start off, and then you can choose to up level from there.
Yeah.
I love that you're like, and as a trauma nurse, you're like, this is where accidents happen.
Yep.
This is not okay. Okay. And then, so for you, even Alyssa, what you just said, like wrangling in those thoughts. So when that fear does pop up, bringing awareness to that. So that's where your broken record moment might come in, is like, I'm going to fall. I'm going to fall. I'm going to fall. This is scary. This is scary. This is scary. And bringing awareness to those thoughts. If you need to step off the bike for a moment, take a few deep breaths and replace those thoughts with something more helpful. So this could be a mantra. This could be just talking yourself down from a cliff. But really it's bringing awareness to those thoughts and stopping them from taking over and spiraling into something bigger. Because a lot of times when we're in that thought process of, I'm going to fall, this is scary, I can't do this is too hard, oh my gosh, I'm not, just too slow, our whole body starts to tense up. Our grip starts to get like stronger, our like elbows knock in, our knees are pressed up against that top tube of the bike, and we are just rigid. And that's like a sign of the fight or flight coming in, when we're not able to actually move freely with our bodies, and we're not able to breathe properly, and our thoughts are taking off without us, and we're in that like mammalian reptilian part of our brains, and we're not there. We're not decision making there. So bringing awareness, replacing those thoughts, and making sure that we're tapping back into our breath and getting back into that rest or digest mode, and able to bring that prefrontal cortex back online, make some good decisions for ourselves, be more proactive than reactive on the trail. Okay. Any questions on any of those mindset blocks? Good to go? Okay, so now we're going to go into what I offer as a coach. So I offer the holistic coaching for busy, like the clients that I have a million things going on. They have the jobs, they have the kids, they have their relationships, they have families, there's a lot of things going on, plus the plethora of outdoor sports that they like to make happen. So one of the programs that I offer is the Summit Sisters mountain bike program. So this is a self-paced virtual mountain bike program. You're able to do it from wherever you are. We go over everything from bike maintenance to mindset blocks to nutrition out on the trails. And then there's skill videos throughout. I think I break it down in the next slide. So it's a holistic approach to that skill building, or the next slide. So this is going to be for beginner and intermediate mountain bikers who want a community to learn and grow with. People who want to take their biking to the next level or just get it started and building that solid foundation of skills. So getting started, the YouTube can be really overwhelming because you don't know where to start, which video to start with. What should I start with? Should I start with cornering? Should I start with terrain awareness? Should I start with technical riding? Where do I start? And I started off at a very, very like bottom level and work your way up as you go through the course. And those looking for support and accountability when they're going through the program as well. So that online community is part of it. I also put through accountability steps throughout the program to help you set yourself up for success. Okay, so this is the slide I was looking for. So it includes 9 fundamental skill videos. So we're going to go over body positioning, braking, shifting, cornering, terrain awareness, and then we'll get into wheel lifts as the course goes on. So getting those tires off the ground. And then there are 8 holistic educational modules. So everything from fears to pre, during, and post trail nutrition to building endurance. Because often we like to throw ourselves in with the horses and go right out of the gates, and going too fast too quickly can burn you out really fast. You'll have access to me through that community as well. So if you have any questions, you can put them right into the threads and I will answer within 48 hours. There's also an online community to share your struggles, your wins, and all your goals with to help you keep accountable as well. Okay, and I didn't put it in there, but also offer mindset coaching outside of mountain bike coaching. So if you're somebody that's like, mountain biking might not be in the cards for me yet this year, but I am struggling with, A, B, and C within hiking or running or this winter backcountry skiing, whatever it may be, I help athletes work through those as well, and nutrition blocks. So yeah, thank you for joining. And if anyone is interested, I am giving everybody who attended this 30-minute gifted coaching session. And honestly, Laura, if anybody watches the replay and wants the gifted 30-minute session too, that's awesome. I will copy and paste this link in the chat. So these sessions are going to be all for, I'm going to stop sharing. Just getting clarity on what your goals are, what your focuses are moving forward and where you want to go, and then creating a game plan moving forward. Oh, there we go. So 30 minutes, we can get a lot done in 30 minutes. And then we can also talk about working together further from there if that is something that you're interested in, or if the mountain bike program sounds interesting, sign up for one of those calls and we can definitely get you started there too. So hell yeah. Thank you, ladies. This was awesome. I'm so stoked.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Who wants to do a back of the pack mountain biking trip?
Me.
If it's beginner, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, a beginner bike pack or bike. Did you say bike packing or mountain biking trip?
I mean, either one. Actually, bike packing would be really fun too, but
Dude, it
that's
would be.
That's on my bucket list. There's a ride that it's from, you can ride from like either Telluride or Durango to Moab. And it's like this week long, like you stay in huts along the way. They're long days though. So it's like my 2-year goal probably. Cause it's like 30 miles a day times like 7 days. But they like stock the huts for you. So like you show up and like there's food there. You can have them to like drop beer and stuff if you want. So literally all you need is like your day pack, and like most people literally just bring like their comfy clothes, and then they like wash their bike clothes and wring them out overnight, and then just wear the same ones again. And then like all that other stuff that you listed that like, you know, you put in your pack for a day ride, and then like you get there and you have like all your like dinner stuffs ready for you. So that's like on my bucket list. You stay in these like
That also
little
sounds
huts.
like that also sounds like a good, like, not entry level because it's 30 miles, but kind of, because you don't have to pack all of your camping gear and cooking gear with, right? And all your food.
Yeah.
So it also helps with the weight. That
Yeah.
sounds so fun.
For sure. Yeah. And I think it's like, I mean, they're long days, but I think it's like pretty like leisurely relatively. Like they're kind of like, you know, once you have like the basics down, it's not like the super gnarly like drops or rocks or like sandstone or anything. It's like pretty mellow trail. So
cool.
San Juan Huts does it. If anyone wants to like look it up and be inspired and put it on your bucket list.
This group right here.
Organize a ride. I've been wanting to do it for years.
That sounds awesome. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions, or feel free to email me too. I'll put my email in maybe the thread on back of the pack. But yeah, it was so nice to meet you ladies.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Super helpful.
Good. Heck yes. I can't wait to see what y'all end up doing, if it's this year or next year.
We'll update.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I will put this recording up whenever it's available. It usually takes like a day, I think, to like upload into the cloud. And yeah, so you can like replay it, and then yeah, definitely, you know, schedule a discovery call with Sam if you just want to like chat a little bit more. I know I'm definitely going to be doing that. So
Yes, Laura.
Yeah. Yeah, have a good night, everyone. Happy Sunday. I hope everyone has a super fun week, and we will see you in the community.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.